Oh, absolutely. And like you asked me, Art, like, how did you find that mentor? And my primary mentor had been Dr. Inquis, Bob Harrison, because he was the person that I found that was closest to what I wanted in those 5 areas. And I was very young. I was 21, and I'd been listening to his tapes since I was 17. And I eventually went to his leadership convention in Hawaii, which he hosts every year in Hawaii. And I wanted to be mentored by him. But it wasn't like he wanted to mentor me. And I think this is something that if you can get this little thing, that don't give up, keep on fighting. I went to his first seminar, and yes, he spent time with me. I got to know his family. Went to the second one, he spent time with me. He came to speak for me. By the 3rd year, he was speaking for me in big conferences. And he was excited about that. So no, I said, okay, no, I'm gonna pop the question. We were in Palm Springs, had a tremendous leadership retreat just for his top level people that were coming to the seminars. And I went into him and his wife and said that I have this question I want to ask you guys, and I had tears in my eyes. I was so nervous, and it was really an emotional moment. And I popped the question, and do you want to mentor me? And as I was sitting there crying, his reply was, I would love to mentor you, and I could do so much through mentoring you, but my reply will be no, because my task is in different areas than mentoring you right now. So that was the first time I asked him. And okay, what happened with me? Well, since I was already a person that wasn't about to quit, I got more hungry. So I actually thought, okay, if I build twice as big a business, he'll finally recognize that his life task is to mentor me. So 2 years later, I asked the second time, he still reclined, and he never officially said that, Orion, I would like to mentor you. But then time passed, we're about 13 years into a relationship, and he walks on stage and he talks about me as one of his students that he has mentored. So sometimes those relationships bonds as friendships, and it becomes a natural that you're mentored. And even though you got declined at the beginning, it still ended up being what you saw, what you could picture. And that's my encouragement, is don't give up, even though it might be tough to get that person you really want to get to mentor you, which might be the top rank of your company. And I know not all of you, but most of us that are listening to this, if I was listening to this CD, I would go, I want to be mentored by the best of the best of the best of the best, but they're not necessarily going to respond right away. But if you keep on working on you, you're going to get noticed, and somehow that mentorship is going to come around.
And I think that ties in. You said, if you keep working on the actions, and you mentioned, okay, if you do those meetings, if you do enough meetings, you start showing results, somebody up there, especially in network marketing, is going to say, whoa, where is that growth coming from? And you're going to attract attention to you. And I noticed that, for me, it was, at first, I wasn't open to being mentored. I knew everything. So my first mentors were CDs and tapes. Right. And this weekend you spoke here in Oslo, and one thing you mentioned so well was the great thing about CDs is that it shuts down your self-talk. And that's exactly what it did to me, to the point where, like you mentioned, Orion, is that I started to have mentors in my life, Randy Gage, for example, and Tom Schreider, and a number of other mentors. But I never officially said, will you be my mentor? It was through relationshiping that it actually ended up being a mentoring process. So Orion, to you I'll ask, is that what mentoring looks like? Do you go to somebody and say, will you be my mentor? Is it an official kind of Japanese, ceremony?
Bow down.
Is it more of a friendship, and then the mentorship comes through the friendship? Is it both?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting because it's like I'm thinking a lot of the different people that mentored me in areas, I don't remember ever asking them outright. It's almost like, would you be my girlfriend, or would you, it's like sometimes you just, you're hanging out, you're having a good time, it just kind of naturally occurs. Certainly on someone at that level, I think asking and kind of confirming that. But there are many times, it's like pastors that have made a humongous difference in my life, and I don't ever remember sitting down, would you be my mentor? I just remember always having questions and, hey, can we go to lunch? And every time they said yes, it's another chance for a teachable moment, or a time to get some of those questions answered. And in the process of building the business, there's times when leaders are going to come in and do meetings for you and help you. And boy, it's like, man, serve that person and say, would you like to grab some coffee afterwards, or can I buy you a meal? And try to get as much onto their radar screen as you can. And the more time you can get, and it's amazing, the later you go, the more people have to get up for jobs, and then only the hungry people are left, because they're the ones that are willing to lose a couple hours of sleep in order to get the information. Because I'll tell you what, you tell me what a person does during the day, you predict their income. But you tell me what a person does with their time, their discretionary time at night, and you can predict their future.
Absolutely. And let me just jump in there and make one thing really clear. When you then ask them, would you have lunch, and they gave you Thursday at 2, you cancel everything out there in the world to make that appointment. Otherwise, you just lost your opportunity. Because I can tell you how many times people have come up to me and said, Orion, I would so like your advice, would like to sit down, could you be my mentor? And I've said Thursday at 3. And they say, well, that's really a bad time for me. and that would not work. All my mentorships with people that have mentored me have always been on their terms, because I got to be willing to serve. Otherwise, I'm the master, and then I'm not getting any mentorship.
Yeah, the whole, like for both of you, I'm sitting here, beautiful view behind me in the Oslo, and I'm looking at two of my mentors. And there is most definitely a level of respect that comes with that. So I agree with that. Is one, when the appointment's set, be there. Tosh Strider always told me that, he says, the funny thing is people ask him for mentorship, they have lunch with him for an hour, and they did 55 minutes of the talking. And I don't have to say anything else about that. There's a lesson in that. But talk to me a little bit about progress. I've somehow intrinsically, I didn't want to get back together with my mentor until I actually did what they asked me to do. I don't know if that's normal or not. Is that something that you naturally also did, both of you, with your mentors, showing progress?
Oh, you know what, just Orion coming over here to Norway, I had to sit down and read through all his materials, and I was listening to tapes that he had done every single day for that whole week, so that I didn't have to go and ask him about stuff that was already available to me. Because that would be me disrespecting him. And I think that's very important, that get the information about the person first. Get everything available so that you'll be prepared, and that you have those questions that will help you and also help them getting interested in what you have to do. And the way Tom says it is fantastic. And I'll tell you, if you ever have a chance to spend time with Tom, you'll get the best advice in the world. However, if you don't ask the question, you will be talking for the full hour, except from Tom will offer in the end and say, should I buy you the lunch? And you could reply yes to that, and that would be the time that he talks. So don't ever let that happen to you, because that's painful. I've got scars on my back.
Yeah, and Tom, the reason Tom Strider, of course, is that, as most strong leaders do, is that he's a master of asking questions. And there is time for you to speak, and that's when your mentor will say, okay, I'm asking you this question, tell me about that. But most definitely try to learn. That's a great lesson. If your mentor, somebody you're seeking mentorship from, has CDs out there already, has books out there already, hey, read those first, listen to those first, and then, based on that, start asking questions specifically to your life. That's brilliant.
I mean, think about it. If someone takes the time to write a book, say Tom Schreider writes a book, and let's say that it took him 30 days, 60 days, and sometimes, in many cases, lots longer than that, to put together a book. And it might take 6-7 hours to read a book. It's like, man, I gotta have an hour with Tom Schreider, but you won't even take the 6-7 hours that he's already offered to you in the process of reading. And it just amazes me that someone says, no, I gotta sit down and talk about leadership, yet they haven't even read the leadership book you've written yet. So I appreciate, Orion, what you said there, that being a student says, first of all, go as far as you can. Like John Wooden, for example, said one of his mentors was Abraham Lincoln. Now, I might not be the best at dates, but I'm sitting there saying, John Wooden, I know he was pretty old, but I don't think he was hanging out with Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War or so. And, you do the math and you figure out, well, John Wooden wasn't even born when Abraham Lincoln passed away, yet he was one of his mentors through the power of reading books and reading the history. And he said, boy, he loved the way Abraham Lincoln was able to be so humble around so many people that thought they were a smarter man, and yet Abraham Lincoln was able to work with so many different personalities and get the job done. So he was one of his mentors through books. And if you have a mentor, a real living mentor, certainly any of the CDs or any of the books, man, pound through all of that to where you could quote the stuff that he or she has already written. So when you sit down, you're already starting at that foundation to move ahead.
Mm-hmm. And avoids the embarrassment of asking a question that's in chapter 1 of their book.
I think Michael S. Claus, good friend of you, or the mentor of mine, you've also had the chance to meet him, or he has this easy mentoring program. He says on stage every time he speaks, I'm willing to mentor every single one of you. I'm willing to coach every single one of you for as much time as you need after you've listened to every single one of my CDs for 7 consecutive days.
That's good.
And if you then still have questions left, then I'll spend all the rest of the time I have on this planet to help you. And that will only take you 1 year.